One, two, three.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring folks in from the weight room. John, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good evening. Tonight is the special board meeting / budget public hearing for in anticipation of the 2024-2025 biennial budget. And we are holding a hearing to hear from our membership regarding the budget. The ground rules will be that Mr. Lusk will call your name. You signed up, and we'll take the people who've signed up first. They will each be given 3 minutes. And before they start, we'd like to hear your name and your address, and your 3 minutes will start. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, there'll be some kind of a signal. We'll let you know your 3 minutes are up, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. We have a regular scheduled meeting of the Board Operations Committee scheduled for 6:30. That might run late, start late, so that we can accommodate everybody who wants to be heard about this. Just so folks know, I don't anticipate there being a conversation or exchanges this evening. It's mostly for the board to hear from the membership, not to engage in a debate. So with that and with those understandings, Mr. Lusk, who is our first speaker?
Our first speaker is Connie Harkey.
Connie Harkey, if you give us your name and address, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Connie Harkey, 2201 Quartermaster Lane, and I am a Lake Audubon resident. Let me just turn that. I want to start first with a disclosure. I'm proud to share that Director Perry is my daughter. So moving on. People chose Reston primarily because RA protects and promotes nature in our suburban areas. This is what makes Reston unique and special, and we need senior environmental leadership. And I asked the board to stop micromanaging, set high-level goals, and then let staff do their job. I have lived in Reston for 19 years, and we now have the most competent, experienced CEO that Reston has ever had during this time. Mac Cummins and the new COO, known as the Larry Butler replacement, have been hired into a difficult situation with no CFO, no admin, a board of directors that is constantly changing, and a membership that is feeling financial strain in their own personal finances. I implore my fellow members of Reston Association to consider how much aging infrastructure RA is responsible for. These are difficult financial times, with the cost of everything from chlorine to insurance skyrocketing, while resources keep getting cut to try to stay afloat. Fellow members, have you read the draft capital improvement plan? Take time to at least scan it and consider all we are facing to keep our community excellent. Our aging infrastructure means that we need to be prepared for the unexpected. On the Lake Thoreau pool renovation, for instance, rotten framing was discovered as layers were peeled back, something that required an increase in that project's budget. Do we have a disaster recovery plan? We must not dip into the reserve fund for a momentary director's wish to appear as a hero by artificially reducing 1 year's dues. I asked the board to look to their hired experts for advice, set a reasonable budget, and then let the staff implement and execute. I ask our community to pay more attention to all the challenges that we face, not just the individual items that may have brought you here tonight. Finally, I am a motorboat owner, and after researching the reasons for this past year's 100% increase in our boat permit, I felt that it was justified after 18 years of a very low fee. I'd like to hear staff's staff's recommendation on this for next year. As I said, this board needs to stop micromanaging. Are you an oversight board or an operational board? I choose oversight and leave the operations to your very capable staff. That said, I respect all of you willing to serve on this board, and I ask you to respect your excellent staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Next up, Mr. Lusk is
The next speaker is Barry Steinberg.
Mr. Steinberg. If we can have your name and address, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Barry Steinberg. I live at 11200 Reston Station Boulevard, Unit 506. This is a condo that is east of the Wheeling Metro, where we have massive construction going on right now. But that's not the purpose that I'm presenting tonight. I'm very concerned that the environmental position that the board had previously approved is being eliminated for what appears to be no other reason than a budgetary reason. The problem is that when you eliminate a position like that, it means that either the duties that that person would have fulfilled don't happen, or they get dispersed around amongst a number of other people and don't get proper attention and priority. I'm a retired Army colonel. I served 26 and a half years on active duty. My last job on active duty was as chief of the Army's Environmental Law Division in the Pentagon. That was not a popular job to take. I created it from another position that I had because we were getting eaten alive by not having any coordinated focus on environmental issues. Now, obviously, the Army has a lot more real estate than you do, and those issues were massive, both in terms of acres and budgetary considerations. But yours are as complex as theirs, whether it be endangered species or stormwater runoff or clear cutting of trees and coordination with the county. The point is that you control and have purview over a massive amount of real estate. I'm not suggesting that we ignore soccer fields and tennis and all the other amenities that come with the Reston area. But those amenities shrink to zero if you don't watch out for the environmental issues that are facing you. And usually what happens is they bite you when you're not looking. All of a sudden you will wake up and find that the environmental tail is wagging the dog. That is extremely unpopular with program people who have another mission. If you merge the environmental function with those other missions, I can assure you that the Lorax will not be heard in this process. I consider the cut of that budgetary position to be short-sighted, unfortunate, and over the long haul will not serve this community well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lusk, who's next?
Robin Dusa.
Robin Duska, if we can have your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, hello, good evening. I'm Robin Duska, and I'm speaking for myself and for my husband, Richard Huff. We're at 11511 Running Cedar Road. And I also have statements from several other residents that Mr. Lusk has said that I could read afterwards, if I may do that as well. But I'll start with my own and my husband's. I understand that a motion was made at the 26 October meeting to defund an open position in the RA budget that was equivalent to the salary plan for the unfilled environmental director's position, and that the motion passed 5-4. There was considerable community support for this position when it was established nearly 3 years ago, but the motion to defund it does not seem to have been discussed even with the Environmental Advisory Committee. My husband, Richard Huff, and I have lived in Reston for 9 years. We're especially appreciative of the role that Reston's natural spaces play in keeping Reston home values high. I'm a former EAC member who volunteers extensively in Reston's natural areas, and since 2017, I've co-led the team producing the Reston Association State of the Environment Report, or RASER, with which I trust all board members are becoming familiar. RA's board has endorsed an ambitious range of recommendations in the 2022 RASER, but RA is not staffed to coordinate them. RA needs an experienced executive level manager who can manage staff action on RASER 2022 recommendations, which, like all recommendations made since 2017, have been accepted by the RA board. Executive level coordination is particularly needed because the interrelated functions of natural resource management and environmental education are managed by different departments. Despite the best efforts of current RA staff, there remains much vital work to do to satisfy these recommendations. This manager is also needed to recruit and mentor junior employees, to apply for grants to bolster environmental efforts, to liaise with the Volunteer Environmental Advisory Committee, to work with RA Communications and the Walker Nature Center to educate the community on environmental issues, to handle member cluster and other conflicts regarding stormwater and other environmental issues, and to mentor employees who are learning how to do so, to advise RA about how to manage its 1,300 acres of open space, including 800 acres of natural areas, using environmentally sound practices, to position Reston as an environmental leader in the biophilic network of which we're a member and in Fairfax County, and ensure Reston is adhering to Fairfax County guidance on tree management and other environmentally related practices. Finally, to better coordinate with Fairfax County's recent initiatives to combat climate change and to make the county more resilient regarding its effects. Please give these points your consideration before finalizing the budget. This environmental position is sorely needed. And if I may go on to the other member comments.
We're within the 3 minutes, that'd be lovely.
So we're there.
I believe
We're at 3 minutes.
each member deserves 3 minutes, don't they?
Well, if they come to the public hearing, I'm happy to have their statements delivered and distributed to all of the members, but we have other people who've signed up to speak this evening.
Okay, I'd been told that I would be able to speak for them. So I have one statement from Freya de Cola at 1626 Wainwright Drive. I have learned with dismay that the RA board has defunded a new but unfilled position of environmental director. As a former co-chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, I can attest to the importance of having such a position as part of RA's leadership team. Over my years on the EAC, I became aware of the many complex issues RA's environmental staff deal with to keep our natural areas and wildlife healthy, and to educate RA members on environmental best practices to enhance their own property and avoid harming the common areas that we all share. I strongly believe that this position is essential if Reston is going to remain a desirable community for current and future residents. Reston has been looked to as a leader in environmental stewardship, and coordination is essential for maintaining that leadership. It is particularly necessary as we face the effects of climate change and have to learn how to accommodate to new and more extreme planetary conditions. RA needs an environmental director to respond. If RA's environmental stewardship is piecemeal, uncoordinated, and underfunded, the natural areas and wildlife that contribute so much to our quality of life in Reston will decline. Lakes can become toxic, woods overgrown with invasive vines and shrubs, and pollinators and birds disappear. An environmental director position is crucial to provide continuous oversight, coordination with other RA departments, and to keep environmental problems from turning into expensive disasters. Please restore the environmental director position to the budget and keep Reston a place where people want to live, work, and play.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, the other statements are quite short. Do you want to hear them?
Point of order. I believe if she's speaking on behalf of other people, she gets 5 minutes.
No, if you're speaking on behalf of an association, you get 5, or cluster, you get 5 minutes, or similar situation, Erwin. We have another meeting at 6:30, Erwin, and I'm trying to give the other people who signed up to speak.
May I just mention?
Go ahead. I'm happy, Ms. Duska, I'm happy to have you submit if they have written statements.
And I have done so. I would just like to mention that one of them is on.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say that if you have written statements from other members, if you'll forward them to us, we'll get them out to the board so that all the board members can have the benefit of those written statements. Does that work?
I have done so. I just wanted to mention that one statement is on behalf of 99 people.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Who's the next person who signed up?
The next speaker is Lyn Molyn.
Ms. Molson, if you give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Lyn Molyn, and I live at 11472 Links Drive. Many of you know me for my civic involvement as president of Reston Citizens Association. But tonight I'm here speaking as a 37-year resident of Reston. I'm here as a proponent of filling the environmental director position that was approved by the RA board 2 years ago. Reston is facing a host of environmental challenges now with the growth of Reston, climate change, the problems we've recently had with the algal blooms in our lakes, and stormwater runoff issues. Reston's stream valleys have been heavily damaged by erosion from urban floodwaters. These issues are not being addressed by the county and are issues that need to be addressed by the community and RA. With the retirement of Claudia Thompson Deal, Reston Association failed to backfill that position. We need to replace Claudia with a leadership level role. There is no real coordination between the county and Reston Association. Reston's designation as a biophilic city needs to be nurtured. Reston needs representation on the Biophilic Cities Network. I don't know if you all have been to the Biophilic Cities website, but Reston is missing from that homepage, even though we are still, so this needs nurturing. And it is a prestigious designation that deserves that nurturing. The environmental stewardship of our community is extremely important, and I urge you to fund this extremely important position in your upcoming budget deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molyn. Mr. Lasko, what do you have next?
The next speaker is Doug Britt.
Doug Britt, please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Doug Britt, former RA board director. I live at 1569 Harper's Cove Lane, Reston. As a professional biologist and a longtime resident, 48 years now, I've experienced a multitude of threats to our community's natural features, including our streams, lakes, ponds, wildlife, urban forests, and open spaces. In recent years, threats from redevelopment, climate change, invasive species, stormwater runoff, and population increases have greatly exacerbated the challenges of protecting and managing our environment. At the same time, Reston has lost a number of its most seasoned environmental professionals. The current staffing is extremely competent and hardworking, but cannot keep pace with the increasing environmental threats to our community. For example, the 2022 Reston State of the Environment Report identified the status of 13 environmental attributes of our community to be less than good. And the 2022 RACER Recommendations and Report Card indicated 48 former recommendations, some dating back to 2017, to improve or protect Reston's environment have not yet been sufficiently addressed. In 2020, the RA board approved undertaking a long-term Reston Climate Change Action Plan process to make Reston more resilient to climate change while adapting to the changes that cannot be mitigated, and to support Fairfax County's community-wide energy and climate action plan and resilient Fairfax initiatives. At the same time, such an effort requires senior leadership from RA and close cooperation with county government, residents, and business owners. Nobody currently on staff is doing this job. Currently, there's no single person having the responsibility to develop, monitor, and enforce uniform environmental policy for RA. Thus, actions taken by one department may conflict with actions in another department regarding the environmental impact of equipment purchases, operations, maintenance, energy use, and waste management and recycling. Claudia Thompson Deal, as was just mentioned, was a highly compensated environmental professional who retired from RA in 2021 after almost 30 years of experience. Her replacement was never hired, and her duties were distributed among existing staff, further increasing their workload, especially post-pandemic. In 2018, Reston became the 13th community worldwide to be accepted into the Biophilic Cities Network, a global network of partner communities working collectively to pursue the vision of a community planned and designed to connect its residents to nature as an element of daily life. I believe this was one of the most prestigious recognitions that Reston has been given. In October of 2022, Reston Association passed an environmental resolution confirming its commitment to being a biophilic city partner. This resolution reads in part, quote, "The Reston Association confirms its commitment to the ideals of a biophilic community by prioritizing the protection, restoration, and maintenance of Reston's natural features, including its lakes, streams, urban forests, and meadows. By ensuring frequent, immersive, and enduring connections between its residents and the natural environment through its walking paths, trails, nature center, recreation areas, and environmental outreach programs, Reston Association will help protect and sustain the health and welfare of its citizens and its flora and fauna now and for generations to come." Representatives of the biophilic network communities communicate monthly and share information regarding policies, programs, and lessons learned. As of November 1st, as we just heard, there are 30 communities worldwide listed as biophilic city partners. Unfortunately, Reston is no longer listed as those on the website, and hopefully this is an oversight and not an indication we've lost our standing, but perhaps it's another indication that Reston Association's environmental staff cannot meet all of its pressing needs. In closing, I appeal to the Reston Association Board to make the recruitment and hiring of an environmental director a budget priority. The fact that Reston, founded upon preserving its natural beauty as a founding principle, has never had an environmental staff position designated as a member of its leadership team is unacceptable. To advertise such a position 2 years after first approving it, only to retract it, would be a terribly short-sighted action, given the complexities of the environmental challenges facing us and those of the generations that will follow. Over the years, Reston Association and its predecessor, the Reston Homeowners Association, have conducted numerous surveys that queried residents regarding what attracted them to Reston. Overwhelmingly, the most common answer was related to its environmental amenities. Let's reflect those same priorities in Reston Association's future budget. That's my request. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lusk, who's next?
The next speaker is Bob Petrine.
Good evening. I'm Bob Petrine, 2503 Foxcroft Way, and I'm speaking to the pontoon boat fees issue. Over the past 47 years, my wife and I have known numerous couples with barges or pontoons who invited us out for evening rides, so I have no skin in this game. Those rides informed us of the hidden costs of owning either a boat or lakefront home, which is already expensive. Upkeep of shores and docks is no small expense and requires significant dedication of time. The care and respect with which boat owners treat the lakes and its wildlife was impressive, and the protection of the lake complex ecosystems. They should be valued stewards, not charged exorbitant extra fees. This is not Disney World, where magic fairies do this important work, but our neighbors who already pay mightily for the privilege of lake living. Stop this pontoon boat fee madness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Tammy Petrine.
Good evening, dear Tammy Petrine, 2503 Foxcroft Way, Reston, Virginia. Dear Board and CEO Matt Cummins, please continue the search for the Director of Environmental Services and do not defund for the following reasons. I am a 47-year Reston resident and have been working on land use issues in Fairfax County and Reston as a volunteer full-time since 2009. I have learned regrettably that no traction occurs on environmental issues that does not start at the local level. Just a mention of federal and state responsibility for climate change brings desperation and shudders to those of us who are even minimally educated in these matters. So let's look at the local scene. While Fairfax County should promote effective progressive environmental protections that aid in reducing climate change, instead it pays consultants big bucks for plans and then gives lip service to implementing them. Even as headline after headline screams for climate change abatements, in short-sighted Fairfax County, God forbid anything the county institutes discourages development. So we are left with plan rich and implementation poor. In 2020, when assigned to help write the latest Reston Master Plan by Supervisor Elkhorn, I jumped at chairing the Environmental Stewardship chapter, knowing that our RAEAC committee, including Doug Britt, Erwin Flashman, and other highly regarded Restonians, would be able to help write a definitive chapter. And indeed, Doug Britt, with the help from others, worked hand in glove with me to craft a great document. After years of work, including input from this very board, unfortunately, senior county staff decided that citizens should never have been granted permission to write master plans. Because other county areas did not have definitive environmental plans, Reston couldn't either. So at the last minute, they edited the hell out of our document, further reducing it to a shell of the fine work Doug and our EAC folks had created. Instead, the county has promised to update its policy plan manual so every area in the county is equal. In the meantime, expert staff withers and policy plan development and implementation stagnates. In research for writing the Reston chapter, I found that at the local level, RA's Environmental Advisory Committee is the authority in the metro area for up-to-date information on our ecology and climate change. Its RACER report is testament to the thorough analysis of our local ecosystems. A paid director can up the ante and help get the message out that climate change really is the #1 challenge we all face today. We have been lucky so far, but drought, rising sea level, extreme heat, and huge storms may well be in our future. RA must never lose emphasis on fostering healthy ecosystems and combating climate change as much as possible. Other activists in neighboring communities depend on us to show positive actions. Please fund this position regardless of how long it takes to find the right person. Please take your time. Our planet will survive, but perhaps not the humans living on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petrine. Who's next, Mr. Luss?
Next is Craig Gross.
Mr. Gross, can we have your name and address? And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Craig Gross. I live at 2012 Lake Winds Drive. I'm a lakefront owner on Lake Thoreau, and I have a boat. I was alerted to the last meeting, which I watched on the internet, and I was alarmed and shocked of the discussion of basically a flawed hypothesis of that 380 boats should shoulder the cost of quote unquote the lakes, when actually now I've had opportunity to look at the budget, and really lakes, ponds, and streams is that whole budget area, not just the lakes. And I fail to see how basically a pontoon or a floating dock impacts that much expense compared to all the other things that go with the lakes and with the ponds and the streams. A few budget items that probably have already been discussed. So full disclosure, I hadn't looked at the budget until all this came up, and I was like, this is interesting. Under the 3,500, I guess it's cost center or whatever, the property insurance since 21, went from 50K to 180K in premium. I don't know if their asset values go up that much. That's what property values is based on. Also, the modeling shows that in 22, we've got credits for wetlands credit for 540K and stream mitigation fee credit to our good 109. So net, this whole program it looked at a PLL basis was 287K. And then now we're looking at this year that we need to, there was discussion at that last meeting, numbers being thrown around like, 500, 1200. And I just thought it was atrocious that anything like that could even be brought up. I think that there needs to be a more defined explanation when we're talking about quote unquote lake expense and what the real cost is with the lakes, the streams, the ponds, everything else that's being done for the ecosystem, anything to do with the watershed management. I think that it's obviously very unfair that just boat owners would be asked to shoulder such a great percentage of the expense compared to all the other people that are able to use the lake and do use the lake. And my last point being, and I know there's not a perfect answer for this, but we have all this increasing density up on, in RTC and up at Wheelie, and they're not necessarily RA members, but they sure get a lot of use out of it, and they're on the lakes and they are using it. To come back and say that the boat owners should subsidize all these people is just, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I just wanted to lodge that great concern. I'm very disappointed that the board would even consider something like that, putting it on the boat owners, when a previous speaker also mentioned that, yeah, the boat owners are the ones that are out there picking up trash, watching out for things, trying to make things safe, and being custodians of their property, their docks, and the lakeshore and people in general. That's
Mr.
all
Gross,
I have.
if you can wrap up.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lusk, who's next?
We have Victoria Hux.
Ms. Huck, if you can state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, Victoria Hux, 11144 Harbor Court. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I am the acting president of the Harbor Point Unit Owners Association. Our association has 100 units and 66 permanently moored boats on Lake Thoreau. Our 66 boats make up 17% of the permitted boats moored on Ruston Lakes. While 66 of us enjoy mooring our boats on the lake year-round, increases in the permit fees that were suggested at the October 26th meeting of this board, which ranged from $1,200 to $500, would put an undue burden on the people of our community. So consider, at $500 per boat, Harbor Point would shoulder $33,000 of the proposed budget. These numbers are neither reasonable nor are they supported with analysis. We disagree with the idea that our boat owners are the only individuals in the community who enjoy the lakes and therefore should shoulder the entire burden of all the Ruston lakefront costs. Our boats don't cause damage to the lake. They are electric. Our boats don't cause algae blooms. Our boats don't cause the buildup of silt that requires dredging. We strongly ask that the board reconsider their proposal for high fee increases that will put an undue burden on our boat owners and an undue burden on the Harbor Point condominium community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Who's next, Mr. Lusk?
We have Carissa Barker.
Ms. Barker?
Hi there, Carissa Barker. I'm at 2029 Chadds Ford Drive. I am a lakefront owner on Lake Thoreau, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think the conversation around the environmental director is especially germane to this conversation about asking boat owners to shoulder an undue percentage of a budget need. One of the key points is that the lake system is a critical part of Ruston's stormwater management. And it's also something that all homeowners and residents in the Reston area benefit from. The 4 lakes and the beautiful nature around are why people move to Reston. So to suggest that only the boat owners are the beneficiaries of the lake seems to be missing a lot of data and reality. I would also ask that we not treat the Reston natural resources as a Disneyland kind of old school, you need an e-ticket in order to ride kind of scenario. If that were the case, then I would imagine we would be having a conversation about the proposed pickleball courts or the tennis court fees going up or the lakes or, oh, you have to have a ticket to walk on the Reston trails. There are so many resources in the Reston community that make our community beautiful. I happen to not partake in those things. So perhaps my dues should go down because I'm not walking on the trails and I'm not playing on the soccer field. I'm not hearing that conversation, but because I happen to live on a lake for which I pay dearly in property taxes and just the price of my home, plus the Reston Association dues, I'm being asked, you are considering asking me to pay a substantial increase. And I don't see how that is fair and equitable. I also take issue with the line of conversation where this is supposed to somehow make it right for the people that can't have a boat on the lake. And this is confusing to me because I don't think that the job of Reston Association is to be the moral authority on parity and equity for the membership. You're stewards of our community and our resources, not the ones out there trying to decide what penalty various people should have for their participation. So I just hope that you'll consider both the environmental director position, because I think that's integral to the lake and the watershed and all the things. It comes up all the time in various Reston Association DRB conversations with our runoff and all the other environmental things that the communities who are on the waterfront manage for Reston Association. These are all interconnected, and I would not like them to be treated as separate. And yeah, I think that about covers it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who's next, Mr. Lusk?
We have Gabriel G. I don't have a full last name, just an initial.
Yeah, good evening. This is Gabriel Gorag, 11158 Harbor Court. And I'm here to just quickly discuss some of the points that Craig, Carissa, and Victoria have already stated. Based on the proposal for raising the boat mooring fees to, in my opinion, unjustified amounts without any considerable data. And listening to the discussions of the last meeting that the board had on the October 26th, there's a suggestion of $1,200 being charged for residents, with the assumption that the residents living on the lake with boats are the only ones benefiting from the beauty of the lake. And that assumption, in my opinion, is absolutely incorrect. As we look around, we see a lot of people walking around the trails, putting in their stand-up boards, their kayaks every day into the water, especially in the summertime. So it's definitely not just the people that are homeowners on the lake that get the benefit of it. In addition, it's still being used as a stormwater system. And in the meeting, somebody stated that it's not. I also believe that's incorrect. We're already paying, the Reston Association fees that are there to cover the trails, the parks, and all the benefits that Reston supports for the residences. And so that $800 fee should really be used for that, and we shouldn't be asking people to cover the lake that just live on the lake, because then we might as well go and ask the people that live back in the trails or back in the parks to cover their expenses, because they have a beautiful view of the park or of the trails. So where's this going to stop? And again, the people that live on the lake have paid already a good sum for the value of their property, which is 30 to 50% more than people that don't live on the lake. They're also paying higher taxes, higher fees in every way. And I just think that it's very unjustified, and the assumptions are incorrect that were made in the last meeting to raising these fees. So I'd like to, as a board, to reconsider that and maybe look at just a reasonable increase like the rate of inflation or something more reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lusk, who do we have next?
This is the last speaker that signed up to speak. This is Travis Johnson.
Hi, I'm Travis Johnson. I live at 11741 Dry River Court. I have a list of reasons why I am against the pontoon boat cost increase. Firstly, it just isn't fair. The people who live on the lake, many of whom are boat owners, worked hard and paid or are paying for homes on the lake. I don't think it's fair for us to drop a significantly larger surcharge on them just because they happen to own a boat on a lake they've already paid or, as I said, are paying for direct access to. Secondly, levying fees for political reasons, in this case, equity, instead of fiscal ones in a community organization like ours is bad for community cohesion. If we think we have problems now with the no trespassing signs around the lakes, just wait until we have a dissatisfied population around those same lakes on whose back the entire cost of the lake's maintenance will sit. And then this leads me to my third reason. It will undercut the work of the Lake Equity Working Group before it's even begun. The Lake Equity Working Group has been created to investigate the concerns some members of the community have about equitable access to the lakes and to find ways to rectify those problems. We want to have lake residents be part of the process. As we've seen in the emails we've received and from the voices we've heard tonight, an enormous increase will alienate the boat owners from the community. Any idea that this board will be conducting a fair and impartial equity investigation will be blown out of the water. And I intended that pun. Lastly, we just haven't done the research to determine if this is the best course of action. Will this provide the money needed to pay for lake maintenance? Sure. Are there other ways to do it without pinning the entire cost of lake maintenance on a small section of our community? Also sure. Staff recommended them in our last draft of the budget. We should take the time to consider staff's recommendations before we decide that a yay vote here is called for. Thank you.
Mr. Lusk, who do we have next?
That's the last speaker I have that signed up to speak.
All right. Is there anybody who's on the call who wants to be heard?
So I have a comment here from Mr. Matt Rice, who's asking to speak.
Please go ahead, Mr. Rice, if we can have your name and address.
Absolutely. Matt Rice, 2048 Chad's Ford Drive, Reston, Virginia. I do not live on the lake. And I think that this idea that you're going to try to have boat owners basically pay for the maintenance of the Reston Association of Reston's storm management system to be kind of unconscionable. But I also, and I think many of the points that have been made have been right on about trying to put that burden on a very small group of owners. I think you also need to keep in mind, though, the question of if Reston Association decides to increase the rate of boat ownership to a significant number, you may actually bring in a far less amount of money in support of the lakes, because some people will just decide to get rid of their boats, or they won't register the boats, and that's going to lead to increased costs for to kind of keep people in compliance and pursue them. So I just think you got to be really careful about the potential negative externalities of pursuing an increase that is significantly out of line with inflation or any reasonable amount. Again, don't live on the lake, don't have a boat, but I just really don't like bad. I don't like bad policy when I don't see it. So,
Mr. Rice, I'm being asked, did we get your address?
2048
Yes.
Chad's Ford.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I see Mr. What do we have this? Mr. Novak?
Yes.
You want to be heard?
Yes.
Please proceed. If you give us your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Jeremy Novak. I've lived in Reston for over 50 years. I live on Halyard Lane in Lake Thoreau. I have a boat that I built myself over 30 years ago. I have exceptional objections to the members of this board proposing a nearly 1,000% increase for boat owners. There are over 625 homeowners that live on the lakes in Reston. Although the board only refers to about 380 people who own boats. In addition to the boat owners, thousands of Reston residents canoe, kayak, sail, paddleboard, and row on the lake. In addition to hand-carried boats, Reston Lake activists see larger bass boats, pontoon boats, and other boats launched onto the lakes almost every weekend. People who fish are out on the lakes almost every day. Also, there are many, many other participants that are spectators in the swim, hardboard regatta, walking around the lake, taking pictures, and not to forget you, the property owners living in Reston, because of the lakes. As for the cost of the lakes, several years ago, all the lakes were dredged at a substantial cost. Please be aware that 100% dredging expense for the soil and leaves was from off-site siltation. None of it was attributed to the lakefront property owner. I repeat, none of the cost was attributed to the lakefront property owners. In addition, the pontoon, aluminum, plastic floats, and electric motors do not pollute. Reston studies in the Razor report have shown that over 90% of the pollution in the lake comes from off-site drainage. Additionally, almost all the trash and fishing lines in the lake are picked up by volunteers. As to the amount of stormwater retention needed and off-site drainage, Reston, the Razor report also states that the lakes are approximately 100 acres. 2,500 acres, or 25 times that amount, is off-site drainage that drains into the lakes. I propose to you that the outrageous increase in fees to boat owners is unwarranted and unfair. Thank you for listening and your consideration.
Thank you, sir. I see in the chat that Francis Bastress, did I mispronounce that? I apologize. If you can tell us your name and your address, please feel free to go forward for 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Fran Bastress. I live at 11058 Thrush Ridge Road in Reston. I'm on Lake Audubon, and I've been here 21 years. And I, along with others in my cluster, Lake Audubon Terrace, and the adjacent cluster, Lake Audubon Place, are very upset about the proposed increase. Several of my neighbors never take out their boats onto the lake, and those who do so infrequently. And during 2023, I only took my boat out 3 to 4 times, and that was with only one other person. And typically, I saw only 1 or 2 boats on the lake. So it's incorrect to characterize boat owners as using their boats to entertain others. I think that's the exception rather than the rule. And the most frequent users of the lake are not homeowners, rather they're outsiders for swim races, kayak lessons, fishing, and more. And for this reason, homeowners should not be penalized for owning a boat. More than a few residents here in my cluster are original owners of their boats, aren't original owners of their boats. Rather, they inherited them when they bought their homes. And that was my experience many years ago when we acquired a pontoon boat that way. And recently we replaced it with another type of boat. And since in the last meeting that I watched, the reference was repeatedly to pontoon boats, I'm wondering if that also applies to deck boats. Was that number included? I hope not. If it's not included, I guess I'm exempt. Some of our residents feel that with the logic of having us pay big mooring fees for owning a boat, none of us should pay for the pool budget unless we use the pools. None of us should pay for the tennis courts, but budget unless we use the courts. And in my case, I used neither. Our boat fees were increased 100% in 2023, and mine went from $74 to $148. And I heard through another email that apparently the RA board passed and incorporated standards in 2019 2020 that it was associated with lake usage, which included an update to the use and maintenance standards. And this included what mooring fees would cover. There was no mention about fees being assessed on how often one uses the lake or because of having better access by living on the lake. After listening to the 2026 meeting, it became apparent that the board wasn't aware of this standard.
Ms. Bastress, can you sum up, please?
Yes, so I'll appreciate your consideration of these points and look forward to what the next steps are. The two other people in my cluster wrote long rebuttals to the fees, and they may attend next session on the 16th. Will they have an opportunity if they sign up at that
Yes,
time?
ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so if you can just tell me to whom they should send to sign up. How do you sign up?
They can contact Brittany Copeland, who is our board liaison, who maintains the list of those who wants to speak at our meetings.
And call the main number.
Well, yeah, and ask for Brittany Copeland, and
Okay.
she
Okay.
will maintain the list for those who want to speak at the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this public hearing on the 2024-2025 budget? Anyone else? I don't see anybody. Since everyone who's wanted a chance to speak has had an opportunity to speak, there is no further business before the special meeting of the Board of Directors, and we stand adjourned at 6:50:28. And immediately after this, we'll convene the Board Operations Committee meeting. Thank you all for attending. Have a good evening. And for those of you who are switching over to the Board Operations Committee meeting, we'll see you there. Thank you.